Hi everyone, this is Priya from the GSMA mWomen team. Before we start the webinar, I'd first like to just check that everyone can hear me clearly. Thank you. Hi, just another quick check that you can hear me clearly. Okay, fantastic. Well, thank you very much everyone for joining the GSMA mWomen Innovation Fund webinar. Just a couple of quick housekeeping notes before we start. If you have colleagues who are not able to join this webinar, we will be posting the webinar slides and also the recording on our website. In terms of the agenda for this webinar, first I'm going to outline the GSMA mWomen program and give you a brief introduction to it. After that, I'll introduce the Innovation Fund, outline the organization and project eligibility criteria, and then explain the application process in a bit more detail. A quick note on questions. We very much look forward to hearing your questions and ask that you send them to us via the instant message facility on the webinar dashboard, which you'll find at the side of your screen. Okay, great. So let's get started. First of all, we'd like to introduce the GSMA for those of you who don't know us or haven't worked with us before. So the GSMA is the trade association for mobile operators across the world. Currently, we have about 1,000 companies as members. Approximately 800 of these are mobile operators, and the other 200 or so are companies in the broader mobile ecosystem, such as handset manufacturers, software companies, and equipment providers. Mobile for Development is part of the GSMA, and our broad aim is to serve the underserved through mobile. Because mobile is so widespread in the emerging markets, we believe it can be used to create positive social, economic, and environmental impact. Mobile for Development is made up of different verticals, such as mobile money for the unbanked, mAgri, mLearning, and mHealth. Now, as I mentioned earlier, I'm part of the mWomen team, which is slightly different as it cuts across these verticals. So how did mWomen start, and where did this program come from? Well, it began with a report which we published alongside the Sherry Blair Foundation for Women, where we analyzed women's access to and use of mobile technology in the emerging markets. This study was done in 2010 and had some very interesting results. We found that a significant gender gap existed, with women being 21% less likely to own a mobile phone than their male counterparts in low to middle income countries. At the time, this translated to roughly 300 million women. So that means that 300 million fewer women had access to mobile than their male counterparts. When researching why this was the case, we found 4 main barriers to women's adoption to mobile. 1, the cost. 2, cultural barriers. 3, the women's perception of their own technical literacy, so their ability to use the phone. And 4, the women's perception of the value of a mobile phone. Now, this is very interesting because it suggests that the mobile services are not targeted to the women's needs if they're not perceiving the mobile phones as valuable. So moving on to the next slide, the GSMA mWomen program. What do we do? Well, the main objective is to promote increased mobile access and use by low-income women in the developing world. We want to encourage the mobile industry to appreciate and serve the women's segment as part of their overall business strategy. And we want to make sure that life-enhancing, value-added services are increasingly available to women. We found through our research and through interviews with women in the field that this target segment value economic opportunities, health and education information for themselves and their children. So if these services are available to them, they will be valued and hence more likely to spend money on them, which suggests that they're less interested in beauty tips and recipes and more interested in health and education and financial information. So how do we go about doing this? So in order to achieve our objectives, we have two main buckets of activities. First of all, we offer technical advice and assistance to both the mobile industry and to our partners in the development community. This could be during the planning phase of a product which is aimed at low-income women. And for example, we can offer insight into how to conduct consumer research or how to think about marketing to this part of the population. And the Innovation Fund grants are part of this effort to encourage action. And I'll speak more about the Innovation Fund grants shortly. The second and other key part of what we do is to disseminate insights and lessons learned so that others are encouraged and equipped to act. So once we've worked with mobile operators and those in the development community and generated case studies and models of success, we make sure that these are spread as widely as possible through case studies, research reports, which you can find on our website, and we encourage you to take a look at those. Moving on now, I wanted to outline a couple of examples of mWomen initiatives which have been successful, just to give you a flavor of the type of action we're speaking about. We're pleased to have seen many mWomen initiatives, but would like to highlight two as examples. First of all, AsiaCell in Iraq, which is a great example of using consumer research to develop a tariff plan based on the wants and needs of women. So in 2011, AsiaCell analyzed their subscriber base and found that women made up only 20% of this. They then conducted some in-depth consumer research to understand the usage patterns of women in terms of mobile phones and to understand their needs. And based on that, they then launched the Almas line of products, which includes features such as a free bye-bye service, which blocks potential harassers from calling or texting, which they'd found from their research would be valued by women. And this Almas line also enables women to have the freedom to choose their own off-peak hours. Again, something that women had stated would be valuable and useful to them when they'd done the consumer research. So this is an example of a successful offering targeted at women, which has clear social impact and is also commercially viable for AsiaCell. The second example is Etisalat, which launched the mobile baby service, which was developed in partnership with Qualcomm, the NGO D3 International, and Great Connection. And this is a suite of affordable services which is designed to reduce the instance of death occurring from pregnancy in the emerging markets. And this is interesting because Etisalat partnered with the NGO D3 International, and clearly this service also works well for D3 International because it's helping to broaden the NGO's reach and have access to women, which they may not have had previously. And this has also seen very good results. So it was launched in Tanzania, and we've already seen a substantial drop in maternal mortality rates as a result of this service. So this is a good example of a value-added service in the form of maternal health information, which has been launched by Etisalat. Now we'll move on to the Innovation Fund specifically. So as I mentioned earlier, the Innovation Fund is one of the mechanisms we use to support and encourage action by mobile operators and those in the development community. And it has four broad objectives. First of all, one of accelerating. So we want to encourage mobile operators and NGOs to test innovative ideas which tap into the commercial and social potential of the female market. Two, solutions. As I mentioned, our research showed that there are four main barriers to women's adoption of mobile: cost, cultural barriers, technical ability, and perception of value. And we want to test out different solutions to tackling these barriers and see what works. Thirdly, advocacy. We want to help generate case studies and lessons learned which can be disseminated within the industry to encourage new initiatives. And fourthly, and very importantly for this round of grants, partnership. We believe that a lot can be achieved through the combination of mobile technology, which, as you all know, is so widespread in the developing world, and NGOs, which have local knowledge and access to local populations. So we want to stimulate these partnerships between NGOs and mobile operators. So what we want to do is identify solutions for low-income women. And on the left-hand side of this slide, we have a few examples of what these types of solutions could look like. And often we refer to these as offerings for women. So an offering could be a product or a service. For example, a value-added service which will empower women in some way. So the Etisalat mobile baby service is an example of a value-added service. Another type of value-added service could be in the domain of finance, which helps women in their way of managing the household's budget, for example. Another type of solution or offering could be a marketing approach, so an awareness campaign which uses below-the-line techniques, for example, or it could be a new type of distribution mechanism, so a way of perhaps using the NGOs on-the-ground network to access women's groups, for example. And on the right-hand side, we see the goals. So our goal is to increase women's access to mobile in an economically sustainable way. And we aim for access to mobile in and of itself, and also to services which we hope will enhance the lives of low-income women. And these services could be in the sector of agriculture, business, education, finance, etc., etc. And as I said before, we believe that women are more likely to see the value in mobile if relevant services are available to them. So the Innovation Fund itself, there are two grant schemes, one for mobile operators and one for NGOs. Today we're talking about our current round, which is for NGOs. The next round of operator grants will take place in the second half of this year. So we'll concentrate on the right-hand side, which is for NGOs. And it's important to note that when we talk about NGOs, it's quite a broad definition. So it's NGOs and also for-profit social enterprises, which have a strong emphasis on delivering social impact. So the NGO grants, we have a total fund of $1 million, and that will be split into 7 grants of $140,000 each. And in this round, which we launched recently, we're looking to award 3 grants to NGOs or social enterprises. In terms of the duration, the grant-funded period will be up to 10 months, and by the end of this period, we expect that the offering will have been launched. We also expect that insights into what works in terms of serving resource-poor women will be available for sharing with the development community and the mobile industry by the end of this period. And this won't be the end of our engagement, though. The GSMA mWomen team will be happy to offer support beyond this period, as we very much hope that the projects will live on beyond the grant-funded period and will deliver mid- and long-term results. I'll speak in more detail about which types of projects are eligible shortly, but it's important to note that partnership with an operator is required for NGOs and social enterprises. So definitions of success. What are we looking for and what are we trying to achieve from the Innovation Fund? The Innovation Fund's success is going to be measured in its capacity to help increase the number of women who have access to and use mobile and mobile value-added services. So what we want to see is new solutions being developed, designed, tested, and then proven successful. And we want NGOs and mobile operators to to design and test new opportunities to service resource-poor women in their markets. And success of an individual grant will be defined by the design and launch of an innovative and commercially sustainable offering which increases women's access to mobile phones, for which the commercial and social value can be monitored and shared. So as I said before, we're looking for the design and launch of an offering, which can be a product or service, a distribution model, or an awareness campaign. So now a little bit more into the details of eligibility requirements. First of all, geography. These are the geographies in which projects will be eligible for Innovation Fund grants. First of all, Sub-Saharan Africa. Secondly, the Middle East and North Africa region. Thirdly, South and Southeast Asia. And fourthly, the Pacific region. And a special note on the Pacific region, we plan to have a round of grants dedicated to the Pacific. And our current plan is to have 2 grants for NGOs in this region and 1 for a mobile operator in this region. And this is currently scheduled for the second half of 2013. So if we have any potential applicants for the Pacific region, we would like to request you to get in touch with us so we can best advise you on when to apply. Right, in terms of organizational ability, as I said, we're looking for social enterprises or NGOs which are legally registered to operate in the country of the proposed project and are fully compliant with the relevant registration rules. We're looking for organizations which have been in operation for a minimum of 2 years, and we're looking for organizations which operate at large scale. So that means regional, national, or global. So for these grants, organizations which are very localized and operate on a small community level will not be eligible. And finally, we're looking for organizations which are in good financial health and are able to produce 2 years of audited financial statements. Now, in terms of the use of funds, first of all, please note that the grant funds will be received in full by the applying NGO. And strategic use of grant funding is one aspect of the concept notes and applications that will be evaluated. And our intention is for the Innovation Fund grants to go towards projects which would not otherwise happen without the seed funding. So we're looking to fund new projects and new ideas and not to fund the scale-up of existing initiatives. And so what can grant funds be used for? Or, for example, they can be used towards the fees and salaries of consultants who offer expertise or focus time that can supplement the existing resources and staff capacity. Grant funds can also be used towards secondments of staff who are dedicating at least half of their time to the project. And in terms of other ideas for the use of funds, it can be used towards content development and design, towards building partnerships, towards project management, consumer insights research, and then importantly towards measuring and monitoring results. So part of the M&E. And now we move on to partnership. As I said earlier, this is very important for NGOs and social enterprises. In order to be eligible, we require that NGO and social enterprise applicants partner with a mobile operator in order to ensure wide-scale distribution of the content or the value-added service which the NGO has developed. So the concept note should, at the minimum, contain a very clear plan and strategy for the mobile operator partnership, outlining who the key operator targets are. And by the next stage, the application stage, we expect that the operator partnership is in place and formalized in a written way. And now to data and knowledge sharing. Given the Innovation Fund objective of encouraging further investment by providing lessons and documenting models of success, grantees will be required to share data and insights which arise from the funded project. The type of data and information will, of course, vary depending on the project, but it could include data on the social value of the offering. It could include some commercial data from the mobile operator partner, for example, subscriber data, ARPU data, and please note that, of course, any commercially sensitive data will be treated as such. We'll also be looking for lessons learned about the process for designing and launching an mWomen offering, as well as how the target population has responded to this launch. Now we'll move on to talk a little bit more about the type of projects that we're looking for in these Innovation Fund grants. As I mentioned, we're providing seed funding for innovative projects, and we're looking for new initiatives rather than the scaling up of existing ones. And we found that it can be useful to think about two main buckets of projects which could be eligible. First of all, where mobile technology is being used by the NGO or social enterprise as a way to increase its reach and better serve low-income women. So we mentioned the Etisalat mobile baby service earlier, and as I said, this can be seen as a good way for D-Tree to increase its reach and better serve its target population there. So this is a good example of how the launch of a new value-added service served as a way for the NGO to increase its reach. The second way is for the NGO to help a mobile operator in its launch of an offering for women. And what could the NGO do? The NGO could offer consumer insights, could offer access to the target population, it could help in terms of the awareness campaign, or of course in the content design for a product or a value-added service. So I hope this gives some flavor of the types of projects that we're looking for. And then building on that, there are three key attributes which will be assessed when evaluating concept notes. And these are economic sustainability, scalability, and replicability. So just a couple of notes on each one. The fund aims to build evidence about sustainable models for serving women. And because of this, we're looking for projects which not only generate evidence of social value, but also show a very clear plan for how they'll be sustained beyond the grant period. So we'd like to see a clear outline of, one, the operator's economic incentive for participating in this project. So for example, this could be through revenues generated every time money is transferred using mobile technology, or every time an SMS message is sent. And two, we want to understand the NGO's funding model for the underlying services it provides. So is that through government, is that through private donors, etc. And in terms of scalability, it's crucial for us that the projects have the potential to reach resource poor women at a large scale and contain elements which can be replicated in other geographies. Now, we understand that each market is different and low-income women's needs will differ market to market, but we do want to see that if the project is successful, the organization or the grantee has the networks in place to facilitate replication. Now, a little bit more detail in terms of the application process and the timeline. So first of all, we'd like to introduce the various people and organizations which are part of the Innovation Fund grants process and who you'll be dealing with, so you have an idea. We'll start at the bottom of this slide. First of all, us, the GSMA mWomen team. So we're here to provide various types and levels of support at each step. It's important to note that we are not part of the decision-making process, and that enables us to provide advice and assistance to applying organizations. Then we have the fund manager, which is an organization called Coffee International, and this organization is completely independent from the GSMA. And Coffee International will be reviewing the concept notes which come through, and Coffee will be determining the eligibility and the alignment with the broad objectives of the Innovation Fund that we've spoken about. It will also support the selection panel by evaluating applications according to selection criteria. And then finally, the independent selection panel, which is made up of subject matter experts. Again, this is independent from the GSMA mWomen team. And this selection panel really has the final say in terms of awarding grants. So once applicants have gone through the concept note stage and the application stage, the final 3 for this round, for example, will be decided on by the selection panel. So a little bit more detail on the concept notes and applications to give clarity on the process. It's a 2-stage application process. The first one is the concept note, and the concept note template is available on the mWomen website. We'll provide a link to that towards the end of the webinar. This concept note is very short. It's 3 pages, so 4 pages including the cover sheet. And it's important to note here that the fund manager will not be able to review any concept notes which are longer than this page limit. So please be mindful of that. This concept note will be a short description of the applicant's current activities, so the mission of the organization and the current programs and interventions, and then a brief outline on the project objectives, how success is defined, and what the anticipated deliverables and outcomes are. As mentioned, we also want to see a clear plan for partnership with the mobile network operator. The fund manager, Coffee, will then review the concept notes, and then a small number of applicants will be invited to the next stage, which is stage 2, application stage, to prepare full applications. And these applications will be a little bit longer, so a 10-page application form, which will contain more comprehensive details about the project. Then the selection panel will evaluate these applications and award grants to those which are best positioned to deliver on the fund objectives. So now we have a schematic which brings it all together and shows us how the various actors will work together and at what stage input is required from each of them. So the red boxes are important to note because they're actions on the part of the applying organizations. So first of all, a concept note is submitted, then those concept notes are reviewed by the fund manager, and then the fund manager will inform all applicants whether they've made it through to stage 2, which is the application stage. Now, during the application writing process, the GSMA mWomen team will be on hand to provide hands-on support to help shape a quality application. After that, the fund manager will review the applications and provide some recommendations to the selection panel. Then the selection panel, as I said, will have the final decision in terms of which grants are awarded. Now the timeline. So please note these important dates, which are also available in the overview, which is on our website. The first one is the deadline for concept notes to be sent to us. This is Wednesday, the 12th of June, 2013. About a week and a half later, the fund manager will notify applicants whether they've made it through to the next stage. And then the full 10-page applications will be due in mid-August. We hope to announce the final grantees in mid-September. So that's the timeline. Please bear these in mind. Here we can see the plans for the full set of Innovation Fund grants. We've already had 2 rounds of grants for mobile network operators. And in fact, we're very happy to introduce our first official grantee from round 1, which is the mobile operator Tigo in Tanzania. And what Tigo is doing is using an ethnographer to conduct consumer insights research, which will be used to inform their product design. And there are full details about TGO's project on our website. So this round is round 3, where we hope to award 3 general NGO grants. And in the second half of this year, there'll be another round for NGOs and for mobile operators. And as I mentioned before, we hope to have 2 NGO grants reserved for the Pacific region and one mobile operator grant reserved for the Pacific region. More details of that will be released in the next few months. Many thanks for listening and thanks for your patience. We hope you found this webinar useful. As I mentioned, the slides and the recording of this webinar will be available on our website. And now we'll move on to the question and answer session and hope to answer some of the questions that you've been sending through. Joining us is the director of the GSMA mWomen program, Beth, and together we'll answer some of these questions. So let's take a look. So the first question we have here is a question to define partnership with a mobile operator. And the question is, can it be done directly, or can it be done indirectly through a third-party application? And the answer to that is no. We are looking for direct partnerships between the NGOs and social enterprises which are applying and mobile operators. So we're looking for direct partnerships. And the reason we ask for this is we've seen in the past that the NGOs and social enterprises can have excellent content and excellent ideas. And in order to have these distributed and disseminated on a wide scale, partnership with a mobile operator is essential. So we hope that gives some clarity. The second question, will this be USAID funded or GSMA funded? I think Beth will answer that question.
Yeah. So the question is to inform the organization's choice of contracting vehicle. Will this be USAID funded or GSMA funded? So we are a global development alliance, which means our funding comes from USAID, AusAid, Visa, and GSMA. So part of our funding does come through USAID. So for those of you who are used to working with USAID, some of their policies govern the grant. But the grant itself is dispersed by GSMA Foundation. So I'm not sure if that's answering your question about choice of contracting vehicle. If not, drop another instant message and we'll try to answer, try again to answer that question. The next question is whether GSMA mWomen can help validate the concept note to see if it's in line with the fund objective. Can we have a one-on-one discussion? Unfortunately, due to the volume of the grant, that won't be possible in all cases. As we get closer to the period, we'll see where we can answer questions through email. So when you submit or if you have questions, what we'll be doing is collecting them and issuing FAQs, but not necessarily be able to review each concept note and offer bespoke recommendations. So as Priya mentioned, there's an email address, mwomengrants@gsma.com. If you have questions there, you can send them at any time, and we'll issue FAQs for everybody based on those questions. Next question is, what is the period of the grant from disbursement until the funds to the close of the grant? October 2013 to August 2014, which I think is right for the number of months. I have to count a bit, but that's about right. How many concept notes do you expect to receive for this? We just don't know. It's the first time we've done it, so it's hard for us to say. We just don't know. How many organizations do you expect to be invited to submit applications? Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. We don't know the answer to that either. Our fund manager will review them, and those that are eligible will be moved forward. I would guess, and this is, I don't want to be held accountable to this, it could be around 10, more or less, but we'll see what the fund manager decides. At the end of the day, it's the selection panel at the end who will narrow down the selection to the 3 awardees. Does Asia include Afghanistan? The answer is yes. The next one, can you please share examples of awards that have been given in the past? We have never given an NGO award. This is our first one. But Priya issued some examples of projects that are analogous. And I think she also mentioned the current grant that we already have awarded in Tanzania, which is structured to include first phase consumer insights research to understand what the needs are of women in the target footprint, and to then, in fact, happening right now, a product design workshop to follow, at which point different products and services will be identified to meet those needs. So that's an example of the type of grant. What should an NGO do if we're unable to find a network operator willing to work with an NGO? I think, unfortunately, because we're working with in a context where the operator participation is necessary to get the distribution in place, it just might not be a good fit for this particular grant mechanism if that's the case. As Priya mentioned, you don't necessarily need to have an MOU signed by the time you put in and submit a concept note, but the notion is that that partnership is critical to being awarded a grant. How many grants are likely to be awarded to Sub-Saharan Africa? It's not specified. We have 3, and they will fall within our geographic footprint of Africa, the Middle East, and Asia. Can an idea be solely research and campaigning? The objective is that there would be a product or service or distribution mechanism launched as a result of the grant. Give me 1 second to absorb this next one here. Okay, need some clarification that if we are building capacity of marginalized community through capacity building and enterprise development training to female micro-entrepreneurs, whether GSMA can help us by providing mobile phone access and training to these women. So that type of a project would be eligible. So if you were to construct a project whereby you have a mechanism to, you'd like to implement, design and implement a mechanism to help women micro-entrepreneurs through mobile, that would be an eligible project. Is it possible for NWomen to suggest local mobile operators to NGOs? So within each market, there are only a handful of operators within each market. India, of course, has many. Most markets have, no more than 4, maybe 6 in some really crowded markets. So I think local research will help you identify who they are. Because of the volume of interest, we're not able to broker those relationships for you. We would overwhelm the operators if we were to do so. But we can certainly help you in thinking through how to work with them effectively once you're in the application stage. Do you fund innovative projects that are currently developed? So the question is, do you fund outstanding innovative projects that are currently being developed, or does the project have to be in the idea stage to be eligible? I think the notion is that within the, you have to have a sufficiently developed idea to be passed through the concept note stage and then certainly to be awarded the grant. So the idea needs to be sufficiently developed to be ready to implement as soon as the award is agreed in a grant agreement, and should lead to a launch within the project duration. Can organizations submit more than one concept note? Yes, although because of the small number of grants, each organization can only be awarded 1 grant for NGOs. So one grant per NGO. It won't necessarily help your chances if you throw lots and lots of ideas in there, because at the end of the day, the quality of the application and concept note will be the determining factor. So in some cases, we've had organizations just throw lots and lots of ideas, and we've encouraged them to really focus their energies to create one very strong proposal. So I would encourage you to think it through a little bit in that regard. What is the weighting that you will give to each of those factors? Off the top of my head, I don't recall. I think it's quite equal, to be frank. I think that we made them equally weighted. Are emerging markets a key criteria? Yes, so we only work in low and middle income countries. So the only low and middle income countries are eligible. How do we best show that we have a sustainable project? So I think that's the question sort of back to you really is how will you envision this project having impact on a sustained basis over time beyond the duration of what ultimately is a short grant period. So in some cases where you are service providers relying on either government funding or donor funding, obviously we're not looking for that model to change overnight, but rather have a sustainable funding stream to continue to deliver the health services, the agriculture extension services, whatever they might be beyond our grant funding period. And then also the other element of sustainability that Emily Priya mentioned is that whatever the solution is for the operator, that there be some kind of an incentive for that to continue beyond the grant period. So for example, it wouldn't be an appropriate use of our grant funding to, for example, buy phones for women in a particular footprint, because then over time there's really no tomorrow for that kind of a project. Are there other grant opportunities NGOs can apply for? At this point in time, no. We are the only grant mechanism within GSMA that's designated for NGOs. We ourselves and some of our colleagues also have the grants for operators. I think ours is the only one in open period for the next few months. I don't really know if there are any in the pipeline at the moment in the next 3 to 6 months. And of course, in those instances, many operators choose to partner with an NGO for the grant that they're funded for. So that's also a possibility if you have an idea and an operator in mind. Will you consider an innovation to a solution or service that already exists? So in some cases where it's a discrete piece of additional work, the answer is yes. So for example, we're not able to fund scale up of an existing innovation, but rather if you have a strong case to make and a strong rationale how this money will add value and fundamentally shape a service that's in place so that it better serves women through access and use of mobile, then that would be something that could be considered. So for example, the grant that we've already awarded, the operator was already in the process of developing a solution for farmers and is using the grant to do research on women in that geographic footprint to figure out how to tailor the solution in place to better serve women, but then also to go beyond that to consider other products and services that that population would value. Can we have sessions with women to identify their needs so that they own the process? So yes, so that's one very good practice. Depending on the type of project you're launching, if you decide to do research on women, having participatory approaches, even involving the target consumers in the design process is a very, I wouldn't say common approach, but it is an approach that is undertaken already by industry. So yeah, so by all means. Can we buy phones for the women with some of the funds or grants? Probably not the best strategy to demonstrate the sustainability, since that's unlikely to be a scalable and replicable model. The 4 key barriers to the use of mobile phone by women, I would refer you to look at our website to the Women in Mobile report that was published in 2010. And that you'll see more detail on the 4 barriers that were identified: cost, technical illiteracy, perception of demand, and cultural barriers. So please look at that report, and that will help you understand a little bit more what we're talking about. Another next question. When we talk about mobile, whether it includes handheld devices such as smartphone and tablets, it could include those. Again, the goal is to increase access and use. It could be to a feature phone or a smartphone. Is there any requirement for Indian NGOs such as FCRA is required? Can we have joint, well, that question, I don't know that I understand it. If that, you might want to, maybe perhaps you can elaborate if that's a form of registration for an Indian NGO. The expectation is that the organization is registered in the geography in which you're operating. So Foreign Currency Regulation Act. So if you don't mind, sir, if you could just email that to us, and then maybe we can try to understand a little bit more. I don't know the answer to that off the top of my head because I'm not familiar with that act. So maybe we can cover that offline through an email exchange. I'm sorry. When we talk, and then the next question is, can we have a joint collaboration between a U.S. NGO and Indian NGO? Sure, nothing prohibiting that by any stretch. I think it's what the panel will be looking for are smart partnerships that make sense, that are strategic and have a clear rationale for why the various partners have been selected and what the value add is. Because as we all know, the more partners, the greater complexity. So it's really the strategic rationale behind it that we're looking for.
To be registered. So the next question, do you have to be registered in the specific country, or is the geography sufficient? I would say that we require registration in the specific country of project implementation. So I hope that's clear. Will you consider a research center within a university as an NGO? That's a good question.
Okay, so it could be, it depends. In many cases, research universities are involved in project implementation. And I think, again, at the end of the day, what we're looking for are implementations, deployments of products and services. So if the research center is within a partnership that will lead to implementation, then that would be eligible. Can we pilot the idea within a small population due to the high cost of implementation? Again, there's the question of the rationale and the evidence that this is something that could be scaled up and replicated. So while smaller pilots could be eligible, there's a strong expectation that the idea is something that could both through implementation approach, but also through the economics, be scaled up. Can we include the bank as a partner in the implementation? It could be, if you're talking about, for example, a mobile money project, that could be the case, but it will also need to include an operator. Does an NGO have to have a tax-exempt status in the country? I think, again, the question is what constitutes an NGO within each country. I don't know the rules for each country. We covered them all? Yeah. So we've reached the end of the questions that we have right now. We'll give a few moments to for others to apply them, to submit more questions. I'll hand over back to Priya in the meantime, give you all a few more seconds to put in your last minute questions.
Thank you, Beth, and thanks to everyone on the phone and dialed in for these great questions. We hope that's helpful. On the slide, which you can all hopefully see, we have two important bits of information. First of all, our website address, which is www.mwomen.org. And there you can find information about the GSMA mWomen program, and also information on this round of NGO grants. So, for example, all the documentation that you'll need, the concept form, template, etc. And secondly, our email address, if you have specific questions. So that's mwomengrants, all one word, @gsma.com. And we have another question which has just come through. Thank you. is it possible to have a mobile VAS on top of an existing project? And the answer broadly to that is yes, it would be possible for the Innovation Fund grant to cover the development of a mobile VAS if it is leading to increased access and use of mobile by women. So yes, that's possible. It can be an existing project, and this particular funding can be used to develop a new mobile VAS. We have another question about a newer organization. So if the NGO organization is new and we do not have 2 years of financial information, what do you recommend? So in that case, if you're part of a wider organization with financial information which is available, then that could be considered. This is a little bit tricky, so it's going to have to be case by case. But generally, as a rule, we are looking for well-established organizations which have been in operation for 2 years and have 2 years of financial information available. If anything else, it will have to be a very specific case-by-case approach. Another question, can we use an integrated approach that seeks to include a marriage between agriculture, health, and violence prevention? Yes, I would say broadly an integrated approach is possible, but do bear in mind that we're looking for very clear and measurable social objectives. And my feeling is that if we look to tackle so many problems, it may be difficult to actually measure the results. So again, it will be case by case, but in theory that could work.
We have another question about contracting vehicle. This is a bit technical for some of you, I imagine, but when USAID issues a grant, which is then relates to sub-grants, which is what this is, then the rules regarding the rules governing our grant from USAID would also apply to our sub-grantees. So that means that, in fact, yes, the grants would have to be compliant with the CFR. I've forgotten the numbers. So those of you who are familiar with USAID will be familiar with that particular regulation, and that is the case. Yeah. So, for example, some very small set of countries are disallowed. You're not allowed to have terrorist relationships. I don't remember some of the other rules. Some of the rules about being that you might be audited from your financials at any time. That sort of question. Those sorts of requirements do pertain. So, Mr. Rajib, we'll get back to that question about your requirements in country, I think, one-on-one. I'm not sure the answer to that. Yes, everyone must have a DUNS number. When you look at the website, it might be confusing because there are regional interfaces of Dun & Bradstreet for various, some countries, some regions have their own, but every organization, regardless of where you're based, must have a DUNS number. So if you look at that website and play around with it, you'll be able to ultimately find your geography in order to create one. It's free. There are no implications other than being able to include it. It's a requirement, again, of our having received our funding through USAID. Do we need to submit documents alongside our concept note to show our eligibility? Ultimately, with the applications, that will be the case, but not the concept note. Now, that's regarding your financial application, your financial eligibility. Your eligibility vis-a-vis alignment with the objectives of the grant should be incorporated within the 3-page concept note. So making the rationale and the pitch for the concept needs to happen within the context of that concept note. We're just about out of time. So what I would propose then is that any additional questions, as we mentioned, please send to our mWomen grants at gsma.com. We'll compile them and then periodically issue an FAQ on our website. So please watch there for when we issue those.
Thank you. And again, thank you so much to everyone who's dialed in for your participation and for all the great questions. And we very much look forward to hearing from you and receiving some concept notes. Thank you.